Welcome to Life Story 999, where we share powerful stories that leave a lasting impact. In today's story, we're diving into a moment of disrespect that went viral and changed the life of one man forever. It's about a fallen soldier, a man who thought little of the sacrifice and the unexpected consequences that followed. As we recount this tale, we'll explore the importance of respect, especially when it comes to honoring our heroes. But before we begin, don't forget to like this video, comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to Life Story 999 for more incredible stories like this one. It was a seemingly ordinary flight from Phoenix to Detroit, one that many passengers would simply consider another routine journey. However, for those aboard this flight, the circumstances were far from typical. On board was the body of Sergeant Andre Taylor, a brave U.S. Air Force airman who had made the ultimate sacrifice for his country. His family, shattered by grief, was on their way to bring their beloved Andre home for the final time, preparing to lay him to rest with honor and dignity. As the plane cruised smoothly through the skies, a solemn announcement came over the intercom. The pilot, with a voice filled with reverence, urged passengers to remain seated as Sergeant Taylor's body was escorted off the plane. His words were clear, echoing the respectful request to allow the fallen soldier's family and comrades to honor his sacrifice as he made his final journey home. But not everyone on board was prepared to show the same level of respect. Richard Johnson, a man in his late 40s, rugged in appearance and brimming with impatience, was seated a few rows ahead of the fallen soldier's family. As the announcement played over the intercom, Johnson scoffed audibly, rolling his eyes as he muttered under his breath, "What's the big deal? Why all this fuss?" He couldn't fathom why the passengers were being asked to stay seated for this special treatment. He found the entire request unnecessary and burdensome, irritated by the thought of having to delay his disembarkation for a fallen soldier he didn't know. The flight crew had made it clear that the plane's passengers needed to stay seated and respectful, but Johnson's disregard for the situation was painfully apparent. His annoyance grew with every passing moment, as if the weight of the sacrifice being honored was lost on him completely. As the other passengers sat in silence, some appearing uncomfortable or even emotional, Johnson's impatience bubbled to the surface, marking him as the sole dissenting voice in a moment that demanded solemnity. Martha, the flight attendant, had noticed Johnson's behavior almost immediately. She had seen the irritation flicker in his eyes when the pilot made his first announcement, and now, as the plane approached the gate, she saw him rise from his seat, attempting to rush to the front of the aisle. With quiet but unwavering determination, she moved swiftly into position, blocking his path to ensure that the soldier's remains were removed with the utmost respect. "Sir, you need to wait," Martha said calmly, her tone firm yet polite. She stood her ground, not allowing Johnson to push past her, despite his obvious frustration. In response, Johnson shot her a sharp, irritated look, his face contorted in disdain. "I couldn't care less," he muttered, loud enough for several nearby passengers to hear. His words cut through the quiet hum of the cabin, drawing disapproving stares from those around him. It was a moment of profound disrespect, one that was clearly felt by those who understood the gravity of the situation. Despite the looks of disapproval, Johnson stood unmoved, still determined to make his way off the plane, without regard for the solemnity of the moment. Little did he know, the consequences of his callousness were far from over. His ignorance of the significance of this moment, and his disregard for the emotional weight it carried for the fallen soldier's family, would soon lead him into a confrontation that would change everything. What Richard Johnson failed to realize, amidst his impatience and lack of regard, was that someone had been listening closely, someone who understood the gravity of the situation on a deeply personal level. Ken Fitzgerald, a retired Air Force veteran, sat just behind Johnson, and when he heard the disrespectful comment, he couldn't let it slide. Fitzgerald had served his country proudly, and as a fellow veteran, he knew the importance of honoring those who had made the ultimate sacrifice. To him, this wasn't just about following protocol. It was about showing reverence for the fallen and offering respect to the grieving family who had entrusted their loved ones' remains to the flight crew's care. Fitzgerald had witnessed the entire exchange unfold. Johnson scoffing, his dismissive attitude, and his disregard for the emotional weight of the situation had been clear as day. Fitzgerald's blood began to boil as he saw Johnson's callousness continue, unaware of the hurt he was causing those around him. The flight crew had made the request numerous times, and yet Johnson's behavior didn't change. The retired airman knew that if no one spoke up, the lack of respect would only escalate. From his seat, Fitzgerald took a deep breath and called out to Johnson, "Excuse me, sir, but you can't act like that. Show some respect," he said, his voice steady, yet tinged with authority. He wasn't just a passenger on this flight. He was a man who had served his country and knew that such moments needed to be respected, not ignored. At first, Johnson didn't even turn to acknowledge Fitzgerald. He merely glanced over his shoulder, his face unreadable, and without a word, he continued to push his way forward. It was as though he didn't even hear the plea for respect, as if the man sitting behind him didn't matter. Johnson's sense of entitlement and his disregard for anyone around him made him oblivious to the significance of this moment. The flight attendants, witnessing the situation escalating, continued to urge the passengers to remain seated. Their voices echoed through the cabin, their requests growing more insistent. However, the tension was palpable as passengers, including Johnson, began to stand, ignoring the solemnity of the moment. The flight crew was trying their best to keep control of the situation, but it was becoming clear that the balance was shifting. Martha, the flight attendant who had been at the forefront of trying to maintain decorum, felt the weight of the situation growing heavier. Frustration and exhaustion began to creep in as she watched Johnson, along with others, disregard the rules. She had seen his earlier dismissiveness, but now, watching passengers rise from their seats, her hope of calming the situation started to fade. In that moment, Martha realized that trying to stop Johnson alone was a losing battle. The cabin had grown tense, and the rude behavior of a few passengers was undermining the sacredness of the ceremony. But Fitzgerald wasn't about to let this moment slip by without a fight. His anger had been building, and as the plane taxied toward the gate, he knew he had to take action. The fallen soldier, who had served with honor, was about to be escorted off the plane, and Fitzgerald couldn't stand by and watch such disrespect continue. The grief-stricken family was already on the verge of saying their final goodbyes, and yet the disrespectful actions of one man threatened to overshadow the entire situation. As Johnson moved forward, seemingly oblivious to the chaos he had caused, Fitzgerald decided it was time for him to make his stand. He wasn't just standing up for Sergeant Taylor's memory. He was standing up for every service member, every fallen hero, and every grieving family who had to endure such moments of disrespect. Fitzgerald rose from his seat, his face set with determination, ready to confront Johnson head-on. The quiet of the cabin seemed to hold its breath as Fitzgerald prepared to speak once more. The man who had been so indifferent to the pain and sacrifice of others was about to meet someone who wouldn't let his behavior go unnoticed. Ken Fitzgerald stood, his heart pounding with a mix of determination and anger. The time had come for him to make one final attempt to reach Richard Johnson, to ensure that his blatant disrespect didn't go unchallenged. He wasn't just a bystander in this moment. He was a fellow veteran who had served his country and understood the deep significance of honoring a fallen hero. With a firm voice, Fitzgerald called out, "Sir, I'm not an airline staff member. I'm a fellow citizen and a veteran. You need to understand the gravity of the situation." This time, Johnson couldn't simply ignore the urgency and weight in Fitzgerald's voice. He turned to face him, but his expression remained cold, unresponsive, almost as if he had no regard for the words being spoken. The tension in the air was thick, as if the entire plane was holding its collective breath, waiting for Johnson to either acknowledge the reality of the moment or dismiss it completely. Fitzgerald's gaze was steady, his face lined with years of experience and respect for the military, but he knew he was facing someone who would not easily be swayed. For a brief, painful moment, It seemed as though Fitzgerald's words would fall on deaf ears. He watched Johnson's unflinching demeanor and felt a sinking sensation in his stomach. Fitzgerald knew that Johnson's attitude would not change in this moment. There was nothing more he could say to this man who was so clearly blind to the significance of the occasion. But Fitzgerald was not the type to back down in the face of injustice, and so, while the situation had reached its boiling point, he refused to allow it to go unresolved. Determined to hold Johnson accountable, Fitzgerald did something that would ultimately alter the course of the story. He pulled out his phone and began filming. As he recorded the unfolding scene, he focused not just on Johnson's disrespect, but also on the reactions of those around him. The flight attendants, the fellow passengers, and the grieving family whose heartache was compounded by the actions of a man who thought so little of them. Fitzgerald's video captured every painful moment. The rudeness, the blatant disregard for decorum, and the complete disrespect for Sergeant Andre Taylor and his family. Later, once the flight had landed and the incident was over, Fitzgerald made a decision that would send ripples through the entire country. He shared the video on social media, detailing his disgust with the behavior he had witnessed. His words were charged with emotion, and his post quickly gained traction. The video spread like wildfire, sparking outrage across the nation. Within hours, news outlets picked up the story, and the online community exploded with support for Fitzgerald and outrage at Johnson's callousness. People from all walks of life expressed their disgust at the lack of respect shown not only to the fallen soldier, but to his grieving family, who were enduring the unimaginable pain of losing a loved one. The most significant consequence of Fitzgerald's actions came when the video caught the attention of Johnson's employer. After a thorough review of the footage and multiple eyewitness accounts, the company Johnson worked for took swift and decisive action. The fallout was immediate. First, they revoked Johnson's frequent flyer privileges, signaling that his behavior had no place in their community. Next, they demoted his professional status, sending a clear message that his actions had consequences far beyond the confines of that flight. But the company didn't stop there. In a move that would prove to be a turning point for Johnson, they mandated that he attend sensitivity training. The idea was simple: to educate him on the importance of respecting the sacrifices made by those who serve in the military, as well as to remind him of the impact that his words and actions can have on others. This step was meant to ensure that Johnson would never forget the consequences of his thoughtlessness and the way it had affected an entire community of people. As Johnson's life began to unravel in the wake of the incident, Fitzgerald's quiet sense of justice had prevailed. Johnson's lack of respect for Sergeant Taylor, his family, and those around him had cost him far more than just a few minutes of inconvenience on a plane. It had altered his reputation, his career, and his future. And as Fitzgerald reflected on the outcome, he knew that this story would not just be remembered for the anger it sparked, but for the lessons it taught. That respect, particularly for those who have sacrificed so much, should never be taken for granted. Though Richard Johnson's actions had profound consequences, the real silver lining came in the form of the incredible outpouring of support for Sergeant Andre Taylor's grieving family. What began as a moment of disgrace soon transformed into a powerful lesson for everyone involved, one that reached far beyond the confines of the airplane and its passengers. As news of the incident spread, the focus shifted from the disrespectful behavior of a single passenger to the collective support and admiration for the fallen soldier. Sergeant Taylor's family, who had been in the depths of sorrow, found solace in the overwhelming love and respect shown by the public. Messages of sympathy poured in from all corners of the country, with people expressing their gratitude for Sergeant Taylor's sacrifice and offering heartfelt condolences to his loved ones. This flood of support, sparked by the actions of one veteran standing up for what was right, reminded the family that despite the actions of a few, the majority of people still honored the fallen with the dignity they deserved. Fitzgerald's video, which had captured the disrespectful incident in real time, became a catalyst for a much-needed conversation about respect for military personnel and the importance of honoring those who serve. As it went viral, it sparked countless discussions on social media, in news outlets, and among everyday people. The video became more than just a recording of a moment. It became a powerful symbol of the ongoing struggle to ensure that soldiers, veterans, and their families receive the respect they have earned. People from all walks of life began to reflect on their own actions. Many shared personal stories of how they had learned to show respect for fallen soldiers, and others shared their thoughts on how they could do better in the future. This moment of reflection was not only sparked by the video, but also by the collective realization that small actions, such as standing up when it matters, could make a profound difference. The realization grew that, in a world where distractions and self-interest often take precedence, simple gestures of respect could have a far-reaching impact. While Fitzgerald's actions on the plane didn't immediately change Johnson's behavior, they sparked something much more significant: the power of one individual standing up for what's right. Fitzgerald wasn't motivated by revenge or a desire to make Johnson suffer. His goal was clear from the start: to educate and ensure that the disrespect shown to Sergeant Taylor, his family, and the flight crew would not be ignored or allowed to go unchecked. Fitzgerald understood that by speaking up, he had taken a stand not only for the fallen soldier, but for every service member and every family member who had ever been disrespected or overlooked in their sacrifice. Through Fitzgerald's courage, a larger movement began to take shape, one that reminded everyone that we all have a responsibility to ensure that respect is not a mere formality, but a genuine acknowledgement of those who have given everything for their country. Fitzgerald's message wasn't about condemnation, but about education and understanding. It was about challenging the behavior that sought to diminish the value of human dignity, and, in doing so, restoring the importance of honoring those who have made the ultimate sacrifice. The aftermath of this incident served as a reminder that each individual has the power to create change, especially when it comes to standing up for what is right. Fitzgerald's willingness to speak out, even in the face of adversity, created a ripple effect that reached far beyond the airplane, inspiring others to reflect on their own actions and think about how they could contribute to a culture of respect and reverence for those who serve. And though the incident may have started in shame, it ultimately became a defining moment, one that reminded us all of the power of standing up for what is just and right. In the aftermath of this intense and emotional encounter, many valuable lessons were learned, lessons that resonated deeply with everyone involved. The most significant takeaway from this incident was the undeniable importance of respect for others, especially for those who have made the ultimate sacrifice in service to their country. The need to honor our fallen soldiers and their families should never be diminished or overlooked. We must recognize their sacrifice, their pain, and the toll it takes on their loved ones. In a world where distractions often overshadow the sacrifices made by those in uniform, it's crucial that we take a moment to acknowledge their service and show the respect they have earned. This story highlighted the immense value of respect, but it also brought attention to something equally powerful: the courage to stand up for what's right. Ken Fitzgerald, despite being just one passenger on a crowded flight, used his voice to demand respect. He didn't stand by quietly. Instead, he took action, choosing to speak out when he saw injustice. His bravery to challenge the status quo and demand dignity for a fallen soldier and his family had a ripple effect that went far beyond the confines of the airplane. Fitzgerald's actions reminded us all that each individual has the ability to make a difference, even in seemingly small moments, by standing firm and advocating for what is just. Fitzgerald's stand served as a stark contrast to Richard Johnson's behavior, and the consequences Johnson faced were severe. His actions not only tarnished his own reputation, but also served as a reminder to everyone that words and actions can have far-reaching consequences. What seemed like a small act of disrespect, a muttered comment, quickly escalated, affecting not just his own life but the lives of those around him. Johnson's disregard for the gravity of the situation ultimately caught the attention of the public, leading to professional repercussions and social scrutiny. The episode became a potent reminder that our words and actions don't occur in isolation. They have the power to influence, to hurt, and to shape perceptions, often in ways we don't fully anticipate. As the story spread across social media and news outlets, people from all corners of the world began reflecting on their own behavior, especially in relation to how they treat others, particularly those who serve in the military. Many began to question how they could do better, how they could be more mindful and respectful in similar situations. This reflection was a crucial step in broadening the conversation about how we, as a society, treat veterans, fallen soldiers, and the families left behind. It served as an important reminder that, even in our busy, distracted lives, we must pause to honor those who have made unimaginable sacrifices for the freedoms we enjoy. The hope is that this story will encourage us all to be more thoughtful in our actions and words, particularly when it comes to showing respect for those who serve. Whether it's in a small, personal interaction or in a broader societal context, we must be mindful of the impact our words can have. This story isn't just about one man's disregard for the memory of a fallen soldier. It's about the collective responsibility we all share in ensuring that those who serve and sacrifice for us are treated with the honor and dignity they deserve. Ultimately, this story serves as a powerful lesson in respect, empathy, and accountability. It reminds us that we each have a role to play in shaping the way we honor our heroes, and that even the smallest acts of disrespect can have consequences that echo far beyond the moment. As we move forward, let us remember that true respect is not just about grand gestures, but about our everyday actions and attitudes toward others. May this story inspire us to always stand up for what is right and to treat everyone, especially those who have given everything for our freedom, with the respect they deserve. Thank you for watching Life Story 999. We hope this story has given you something to think about. The disrespect shown by Richard Johnson serves as a stark reminder of the importance of honoring others, especially those who have made the ultimate sacrifice. The power of one voice, like Fitzgerald's, can make a difference. We encourage you to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that will inspire, challenge, and educate. Every day, we learn from one another, and we hope this story has taught you something valuable today. Stay tuned for our next video, where we'll bring you another unforgettable story from Life Story 999.